all this technology is being created now in Mexico. We're not just using American products, but we're now entering this development stage.
Welcome back to The Restive Perspective, a show about female CEOs and the journeys to start their companies. And I'm very excited to have Maya Dadoo of Worky here today. Welcome, Maya.
Thank you, Cameron. I'm very happy to be here.
To kick it off, tell us a little bit about Worky.
So Worky is an all-in-one HR and payroll platform for the Mexican market. You can think of us as being the Gusto for Mexico, whereby we take control of PTO management, time and attendance, shift management, and seamlessly push those variables over to payroll so that every single employee can have timely and properly calculated payroll.
And how'd you start the company?
I was working at eBay Classifieds in the Bay Area. And essentially, we were running the Craigslist replicas around the world. We had to build the biggest site in Argentina. We built the largest real estate classified site in Mexico. And within that process, every bi-week for the Mexican staff, something was happening with payroll, and it was really chaotic. And at that point, I asked the Amsterdam team to give me access to their payroll system so I could help out and figure out what was the root of the errors. Turns out, Cameron, there was nothing built for the Mexican market. So even we are eBay, ADP has no backend engine for running Mexican payroll. And it was all like 1998, 20 Excel spreadsheets and all misplaced. And so that's when I realized this could be something huge.
You've noticed a problem. There's a lot of ways to go about fixing it. What made you decide to start your own company?
I think it's right place, right time, to be honest. I think first talking about me personally, I'd just moved from the Bay Area to Mexico. And even while I was working here, I felt like I'd lost a little bit of the seat and the power that I had by working in the headquarters. And it was like I was in the other side of the coin. So now I was in charge of operating together with the GM here in Mexico, scaling the team and really ramping up revenue. And that was a lot of pressure, but we'd lost control of having a decision regarding the budget. So that was one. And second is I met who would turn out to be my co-founder. So I knew I wanted to leave eBay. I was trying to figure out what was going to be my next step. And I had a coffee chat with who turned out to be my earliest investor. Speaking to him about the ideas that I had, naturally HR and payroll was one of them. I had other ideas in the back of my mind. And he mentioned, look, someone just came into our office about a month ago mentioning that he wanted to start something within the HR and payroll space, but he doesn't actually have a co-founder. So we said, no, why don't you go over, talk to him and figure it out? And that was when I had regular meetings with Carlos, who's my now co-founder, over the course of 4 months. And then we came back to that investor and said, hey, this is our idea. We want to execute this plan. Would you be interested in investing? And thank goodness Bernardo said yes. And here we are 7 years later. No one in Mexico had worked in technology before. So I was part of the generation, and I did my business school at Stanford and I graduated class of 2014. But out of the 15 Mexicans that graduated my class, we were about 2 or 3 working in technology after graduation. A lot of them went into consulting, into investment banking, into private equity. So I did feel that I had a massive leg up as compared to my peers because I'd been working in technology for 3 years. And at that point in time, what I realized is, look, all this technology is being created now in Mexico. We're not just using American products, but we're now entering this development stage.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the investor process was relatively straightforward. That's not always the case with a lot of these stories, but any kind of tidbits or information related to that you want to share?
Fundraising continues to be something that we place a lot of time and effort in. It doesn't always come that easy. I would say that given Mexican political and socioeconomic dynamics, we, by 2018, 2019, we had national elections. And one of the things that made investors really hesitant around investing in Mexico at that time was we are changing parties and we're going from a center-right government towards a center-left. And so the flow of capital really stopped for a year or two then. And then came COVID. So COVID was still an era where there was a lot of capital, but those 6 months when COVID started to hit, a lot of funds stopped investing. And we were really lucky to have received our term sheet the day that pandemic hit, March 16th. I remember Bill Silufo from QED calling me and saying, hey, we're with you in the good times and we're with you in the bad times. So this term sheet has no strings attached. We're still going to invest in you, even though this larger chaos is hitting the world. And so we continued there. And I would say fundraising this year has been a lot tougher than what I expected.
And tell us about just the mix of, it sounds like you have some local investors, some QED obviously being a US based investor. Like what's that mix been? And how do you think about cap table composition more broadly?
I would say in the very early stage, 100% of our cap table was Mexican. We had one fund and the rest of the investors were more friends and family. As we scaled our seed round, then we became officially a little bit more formal, whereby our seed round was led 100% by foreign investors. So QED on one side and Leap, which is a cross-border fund investing in Mexican and Hispanic founders. And these latest rounds, I've thought about it quite differently. As I have started to think about scaling the business, there is no one like us in Mexico. So B2B, SaaS, HR, and payroll, and connecting these two solutions. And so local funds don't necessarily have that expertise of building and scaling B2B SaaS. And so as I look into build our cap table, I've thought about let's bring in global investors that have actually worked in the fintech field, in the B2B SaaS, or within HR tech. But then how do you complement with local knowledge? And so I thought about bringing smaller local funds for the whole round to be as round and complementary as possible.
And do you notice kind of differences in how you engage with or manage these different investors that clearly come from fairly different worlds, even though they're within the same class? Like anything that interests them differently, any way that you kind of engage with them differently?
I think communication is very different. The way that foreign funds and local funds communicate. I think local funds, they're always willing to help, but you need to structure their help a little bit better, right? I think they crave more updates. So you'll tend to have the biweekly conversation with the local funds. You have to, and they're actually really willing to help with sales. So for example, with Worky, we have a local investor WhatsApp group. And every month we say, these are the 30 target accounts that we want to open conversation with as part of our sales process. Do any of you have relationship with people in these companies? And they're always super active and suggesting and very purposeful. And in terms of global funds, they're a lot more focused on strategy and unit economics. So the conversations tend to be more on, is this scalable? Is this not scalable? What are the processes that you should think about starting to change? What are the new technologies that you should bring in? How are you thinking about teams? And how are you thinking about scaling faster? So I think I do see very different sides of the coin from local and global, but I think overall they complement themselves quite well.
So you've been at it for 7 years. You mentioned one evolution of thought. What are some of the other ways of operating or thinking or running the company that have changed over the last 7 years?
If I were to divide Worky's history in 3 stages, the first one would be developing the product. And I would say this product development took us from 2018 to 2020 as we were developing and understanding what the market needed. And what we built was an all-in-one HR platform catered for Mexican SMBs. So we thought we had product market fit, and then the pandemic hit. And as the pandemic hit, it became very real that even though we thought we had an incredible product, that you were able to put all of your HR, administrative, and org dev needs, and we catered for them, it was really hard to scale. And it wasn't scaling. So what we thought was product market fit wasn't product market fit. And then 2020 came and we realized that, we had to change a little bit of the product. Why? Because companies in Mexico, we had larger companies demanding our product, but they cared about very specific features that we didn't have. And so I would say 2020 to 2022 was a process of reinventing ourselves and finding a new addressable market and finding a new way in which we had a much stronger grasp of the actual market.
And how'd you go about doing that? What did that look like?
It entailed bringing a team on board who had worked together and understanding that they were coming into our culture, but they had very set ways in which they worked before. And so being able to join the cultures that one, define for us what were the key values, and find for them they were building our payroll engine. And payroll is a very different process and requires very different, I would say, ways of working than when you run HR. And I would say this new stage that we're entering now has been a stage of, I would say, empowerment. Now that we have the product that we built over the last stage, we're acquiring incredible new logos. So for example, all of the Mac stores in Mexico are using our product. All of the Birkenstock, Sephora, and even larger retail chains are using our product. Things that we never thought we would get to a point as quickly as we have. So now is a moment of empowerment and believing in ourselves that we're entering this new growth stage and we have everything that we can to be very successful.
Often we'll talk to early stage companies and they'll be serving the SMB segment, the smaller one, where, as you kind of alluded to, the needs are a little more homogeneous. Maybe they're getting some interest from enterprise, and either it's the catapult to a completely new target market, or it's a big old distraction and kind of a one-off. I mean, how did you weigh those decision points and ultimately, it sounds like, decide to go upmarket?
It was interesting, Cameron, because I would say when Carlos and I decided to start Worky, we had what we thought was the best idea. That every single company and every single SME in Mexico was going to need an HR software. Turns out that's not true. And that was part of what we realized in the second stage. It's like companies recruit their first HR manager when they hit 40 employees. But even these companies in Mexico, they churn really fast. Why? Because they're financially very unstable. And so after looking at the data, we started to realize that these smaller companies are churning at 25% logo churn rates per year. And so why would we stay in this cohort when we're starting to see demand of companies that are, or that have larger headcount, and companies that have been in the market for a much longer time and that are financially stable? So this is when I think reality hit and we said, oof, we have product market fit, but it's actually a tiny market.
Or a bad market. Yeah.
Let's unlock the second TAM with a big key and let's start selling towards this space. But you're absolutely true. One of the, I would say, bigger adaptations that we've done over the past year and a half is that if you're a small company, you receive one sales call. It's about 30 minutes. You self-onboard yourself into the product, and we don't even assign you an account manager. We've shied away from these companies because we don't believe it's where we should be placing our energy.
How did you kind of land that first big contract? What did that look like? Again, I often see there being this nebulous interest, this aspirational desire to make the jump, but some companies just don't do it. How'd you guys do it?
Well, our first big contract was a tiny contract that became the first Mexican unicorn. So we acquired Kavak. Kavak, you can think of it as Mexico's Carvana. And when they became our customer, they had 70 employees. But the co-founder who had HR under her wing placed a lot of focus into digitizing HR. So they were an early adopter of our product and they started closing big fundraising rounds. And suddenly, and we bill by employee per month. So I loved looking at our P&L and seeing how this single customer was growing and growing in headcount. Up to a point where they went from 70 employees to 1,000 employees over the space of 5 or 6 months. And I think you always need to have one of the customers where you're feeling uncomfortable, right? Otherwise, you don't force yourself and you don't place yourself in uncomfortable situations whereby you don't know how far you can go. So this was it. This was Kavak for us. And I remember getting a call from Lori, Kavak's co-founder, and said, Maya, you need to develop payroll. It's like, Lori, when do you need it by? She's like, I need it in 2 months. And I was like, it's going to be really hard for us to develop it, but I'm going to find a partner and we're going to connect our backend engines. So we found a partner, we connected our backends, and they were able to start scaling payroll. And because we dove into the payroll world, Worky now has our own payroll engine, and 40% of our new MRR, actually 40% of our total MRR, comes from payroll related products.
One other thing I know you had mentioned is, I think you had said previously that you didn't really notice yourself as a female founder until recently, until you reached that growth stage. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I think as a female founder, often we have to prove that we have our stuff together. We have to change the way that we dialogue and pitch. We have to change the way that we come across to appear like very firm. So I don't want to be someone that changes my personality just to fit in, because I'm Maya, I'm myself, and I should be allowed to be myself. And so this is something that I try to actively work on, to not change my personality within different professional settings. I am a female founder, but I'm also Maya, and I'm also an engineer. I'm also many things. And this is me. So I'm very happy to have a seat at the table. But I won't change my personality just because I have a seat.
What's in the future for Worky?
So our Series A is coming up, which we are really excited about. So Series A is coming up. I think bringing a new fund over to our board, which I'm really excited about. and really killing it within the HR and payroll space. I think that where we want to go, there are 20 million Mexicans with formal work here in Mexico, and we today have 40,000 in our belly. So over the course of the next 2 years, we want to scale to 200,000 and possibly even many more if we're able to do it appropriately and fast.
Amazing. And then last question, what advice do you have to women who may be contemplating jumping into the CEO seat?
To be bold and to do it. And I think part of what I tell my team all the time is that we don't grow if we don't put ourselves in uncomfortable but healthy professional or set ourselves in uncomfortable and professional goals. So being in the CEO seat will be very uncomfortable. It will be very demanding, but at the end of the day, you'll have it. It will be a challenge, and it would be one of your most professionally rewarding challenges. And you will grow so much to think that you can do this. And I think having that, you can do this, in the back of your mind is something that I think a lot more women need.
Awesome. Thanks for watching the show today. For more information, go to restive.com/blog. Check out the show notes. And if you'd like to see future episodes, subscribe on YouTube. Thanks.